to all of you to this third and final installment of my explanations of the short prayer to Vajradhara. So we have a lot to do today, and let's start briefly with the right motivation. And you know by now, because we've had this every session, it means a big mind, which means including everybody. But everybody very specifically, not just everybody, which is an abstract idea, very nice one, but it is just an abstract idea. It's like thinking, I love everybody. But then you say, but do you love the guy next door who plays music at 3 o'clock in the morning? Loving specific people, very important place to start. So we think of all those who've been the figures in this story, this drama, this movie of our life. Those who helped us, those who harmed us, our parents who gave us this existence, and so on. And we think of each of them with as much love as we can. And then gradually, bit by bit, those we've known who haven't figured strongly, but who are there somehow in our inner landscape of this life. And then out to all of those we can only sort of imagine vaguely. So we include everybody, big mind. We include them with love and try to find, even though we only have seconds, we try to stop and remember the deepest love we've ever felt for any living being, human, animal, whatever, and try and feel the same love for all of our fellow beings we're including. And then happy to be happy because we had Dharma. All the rest comes and goes, like it or not. Some come and go quickly, some come and go more slowly, some are there for most of our lives. But, 3 lives ago, can you remember those dear ones? Can you remember all the people who messed you up and upset you? Can you remember the house you gave so many hours, years, months to? All gone. Everything out there comes and goes. In here, our mind is with us forever. Forever, one way or another. It's our temporary story, life after life. You can never be somebody else. You will always be you, changing you, but you. And when you get to the end of the journey, then you find the truth of your mind, which is also forever. Dharma helps what is forever. There is nothing more precious than that. It's the greatest treasure we have in this lifetime. So we're happy. We're happy. Look, here we are. Here we are, touching on some of the deepest teachings Buddha ever gave us. So with that motivation and being here, we turn our hearts in loving care to all beings and think that we are studying for them. Sonje chodam soji chonon la jancho bado dani chasunje. Dagi jinso jipe sonamje. Drola penchera sonje dro parasho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe chudang dem parajochi. Dungal dang dungal ji chudang tralwara jochi. Dungal mepe dewa tampa dang men tralwara jochi. Nyeren chadang itan tralwe. Tanyom chempola ne parajorachi. Palden sawilama rinpoche. Dagiche warapende denshola. Kadren Jempo Gone Jesumte, Ko Song Tukchi Marusa Duso. So last week we considered mainly the 2 verses about the legs of meditation and the head of meditation. And so the legs that which carries us forward, which enables us to move on to where we're going from where we were. The legs were this word revulsion, and I explained that. It will be easy to say revulsion with samsara, but then samsara, yes, depending on how you understand samsara, Hinayana, Mahayana, and how you understand what revulsion is with losing the center in Vajrayana. So we considered those, and today, according to the program, then we shall carry on straight away because we have little time with the next verse is about the body of meditation and really about the fruition of all of that. But I think I need to spend a little bit more time on this verse about faith-filled devotion is taught as the head of meditation. And so this was about devotion. And I'd like to bring in here a teaching. A teaching that's not commonly found, that's a very important part of Mahamudra, and that some of you may have come across. And it's about the 4 conditions. Now, I think many of you know the Kaju path that lots of people follow, where we start with the 4 common foundations, the 4 thoughts that change the mind. Then after that, we have the 4 special foundations, special to Mahamudra. Excuse me, need to drink. And these are the prostrations, refuge, bodhicitta, Vajrasattva practice, and the mandala offering. And then these days, the Guru Yoga. But what many people don't know, so we have 4 common foundations, 4 special foundations, is that there are 4 more, which are 4 extra special foundations. I just want to make sure, maybe somebody can turn on a microphone, that you can still hear me, because my little windows where I see some of you have all frozen up.
You're very clear.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
I can hear you.
Okay, oh good.
Treasury.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just thinking I was talking to nobody. Good. Here we go. Then, yeah, 4, so they're called 4 extra special foundations. 4 common foundations, 4 special foundations, and 4 extra special things. So these are foundations. It means they are 4 things we need, in this case, to know very clearly so that we can practice Mahamudra well. They're called 4 conditions. And the idea, we don't have a lot of time, but the idea is that these are 4 conditions for something to happen. And the 4 need to come together, and the 4 need to be as best as they can. If one's a bit deficient, then the whole thing is a bit deficient. If one of them's missing, it's not really going to work. So what are the 4 conditions for Mahamudra? The first one is called the causal condition. And when we talk about causal conditions in general, it means the genetics of a situation that make it possible. For instance, if there's a plant that grows from a seed, that seed's the only thing that has the genetic possibility to produce the result. You can't produce a daisy from anything else than its seeds. So there's a prime cause, a causal condition. Now, in the case of Mahamudra, it's this revulsion with samsara, or revulsion with the absence of Buddha nature in our lives. Why is there an absence of Buddha nature present, Buddha mind in our lives? Because our minds are completely plumbed into samsaric reality, the stream of consciousness. And we get sick and fed up with that, because it's the same old rubbish going round and round, and it's the same old things that get us into trouble again and again. We're drawn into this, we're put off by that, we're fed up with that. We're all the time involvement with the story, the chatter of consciousness. Now, let's put a word to consciousness. And the word we'll use is mind. Mind or consciousness, the play of mind, the samsaric play of mind. So until we are sick and fed up and getting free from that, we don't have the prime cause for Mahamudra. Now, when you look more closely into that prime cause, it's not out there and getting involved with him or with her or with fame or with whatever it is, health. It's not out there. It's what we call ego. So until there's this revulsion with all these delusions of self and self-importance and so on, no matter what we do, you might do fancy meditations, you might sit on your butt for years doing shamatha practice. And until you are absolutely turning your back on ego, it will be me, the meditator, me practicing this, me practicing Mahamudra, me practicing Dzogchen and all of that. You've got nowhere. You don't have. So this is why in the previous verse we had the legs of meditation to give us this first condition, the prime cause for Mahamudra. It's very, very important. And I know people, and including myself, and I'm confessing, who did Mahamudra practice in theory, sat down, did the meditations, did 100,000 of all the things. But it's only when that revulsion really comes up by itself that the power of Mahamudra fires up. So that's the prime cause. Then we need a second cause, second condition, let's say. So we've got the prime cause, first condition. The second condition is called the empowering condition. So what puts power now into this Mahamudra that's emerging? And this is the presence of the Guru. So in the verse we looked at last week, which is about our relationship with the Guru, then we have what will bring the juice, the power, the light into our practice. So I need to say a few words here, and especially this is a topic not a lot explored. So what do we mean by Guru? We're going to have 4 types of Guru, and then in one of them we're going to have 4 more types, subsections. Sorry for the numbers, but it's the way we remember it and the way we are very clear about our analysis. So the 4 types of Guru are first the obvious one, which is a being in our lives teaching us. It might be a human being. If you are far along the path, it may not be a being in this world. It may be a bodhisattva of light, as was Saraha's case. Remember, he received the Mahamudra transmission from 2 bodhisattvas who were with the Buddha at the time when he gave Buddha Shakyamuni, when he gave these teachings. And they hadn't shifted. They were in their pure land. They hadn't taken birth somewhere and gone through like we do, the knockout, the amnesia of rebirth. They were just where they were in a land where the time scale, a state of mind where the time scale is so different from here, where our earthly centuries pass by like seconds. So from that pure transmission they received from the Buddha, they gave it very purely to the human being, Saraha. So one can have a being who's a bodhisattva and so on. That's the first type of guru. The second type of guru, and some of you may have had this experience or glimpses of it, is not another being, but it's actually scripture. And scripture can sometimes come to life under our eyes. And we have special ways of studying called in Tibetan Dongong, whereby we learn to be with the words of scripture in a very sacred way. We give them time. We don't just read a sentence and think, got it. We dwell on each word. We try and feel what was the Buddha's intention when he gave this precious message. And one sentence can fill you up and blow your mind. But more than that, when you are with the text, it is like being with Buddha mind, with the Guru. It speaks to you directly. So that's the second type of Guru. The third type of Guru is in temporary experience in life or nature. So sometimes, well, there could be endless examples, but you're there somewhere and something happens. And these, I mean, what is a guru? The guru teaches you Dharma. What is Dharma? It's the timeless, changeless truths just about the way things are. So sometimes in the presence of, let's take a very simple example, you may be with a waterfall or a flower, but you might also be with a computer screen or a dead dog or something like that by the roadside. You know, lots of teachings in the past of Mahasiddhas came from seeing dried bones, corpses, which made them remember impermanence in such a profound way that they were rocketed back to past lives of practice and their former renunciation. So sometimes phenomena can become our guru. They teach us Dharma very purely. That's the third type of guru. The fourth type of guru, best, but we need to get there first, is called Dharmakaya. And that is the truth of our own mind, the truth of everything. And when one can access that, be that, then that is by its very nature what teaches us Dharma very, very purely, beyond all words, beyond all frameworks of learning something. Its isness answers all the questions. So 4 types of guru, a being, scriptures, occurrences in life, and then Dharmakaya. What the teachings tell us is of all of those, the best is to rely, and I touched on this last time, I don't want to spend much time, but it's very important. Best is to rely on a being who you're in dialogue with, because then your mind cannot trick itself. You know, I spoke last time about how our past good karma can bring us many incredible experiences, and in particular can nourish our intuition so that we can trust our gut feelings and our intuitions, and how as a real Dharma practice emerges, you can't trust it so much. Ego is tricky, it's a survivor. We looked at that last time. So if you have a real being in your life to dialogue with, and that being's a real guru, you're not going to trick them. You might trick yourself, but when you go into that presence, it can be very, very embarrassing, because I remember so many interviews with Akon Rinpoche, that you go in there with all your illusions, and just you set foot in the door and you see his presence, and you realize what a fool you've been making of yourself for days and weeks, trying to talk yourself into something that's really just your ego. So anyway, it's best to have another being. Now, this is where we get into the second category of 4. What are the 4 types of being who can be our guru? And Gampopa tells us about these. He says, well, best is an actual 100% perfect Buddha, like the people in India with Shakyamuni Buddha. Like us in the future, when Maitreya's time comes, and we've all done our practice this life, many, many lives, and see you all there. We'll be sitting round a real 100% fully enlightened, 100% pure Buddha, receiving the nectar of teachings with a very special power. So that's the very best teacher, the Buddha. And then there's Buddha's Sambhogakaya is actually the very, very best, because when we become not reincarnated anymore, but a very pure mind, a great bodhisattva, then we will receive teachings from the Buddha's Sambhogakaya. We will see Buddhas in Pure Lands, hundreds, thousands of them, not a being born on earth. So Sambhogakaya Buddha is the best. When we are reborn as still, like we are in the world, and then Nirmanakaya Buddha, like Shakyamuni, is second best, because there you need words and communications, and our minds aren't so clear. Third best is not 100% Buddha, but a great bodhisattva, like Maitreya, like Manjushri, who becomes our teacher. So when we look at the stories of Asanga, Maitreya was his guru. When we look at the story of Nagarjuna, then Manjushri was his guru. When we look at Tilopa, Vajradhara was his guru. So bodhisattva is third best. And then fourth best is a human being here on earth in a flesh and blood body. And at first we can only see them as a human being. But they are so important because, as Gampopa says, where is it? Let me read it to you. What he tells us is that the best one of all for you is the human being, because you can't see Sambhogakaya Buddhas. You missed the last historical Buddha, and you've got a few tens thousands of years to go before the next Nirmanakaya comes on this planet. Most people don't meet directly Maitreya and Vajradhara and so on. So the human being is all we can meet. And what Gampopa says is, which of these four types of beings is kindest to us? At the outset, when we are still in the dark pit of action and defilement, were we to try to relate to the good gurus, Sambhogakaya Buddhas, Nirmanakaya Buddhas, great bodhisattvas, we would not even be capable of seeing their faces. It is only due to our path being illuminated by the lamp held aloft by mentors who are human beings that we will eventually come to encounter the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. Therefore, mentors, as reborn human beings, are the kindest of all the gurus. And it's very true. Now, what will happen, if all goes well, is the reverse of this process, because you'll meet a human being and you'll receive teachings, but as your teachings mature your mind and free you from your past karma, then you will start to see not so much the flesh and bones person talking to you, but a bodhisattva. You'll feel more and more the power of bodhisattva. And then as time goes by, you might experience the Nirmanakaya. And then as more time goes by, the Sambhogakaya, where when you're with your teacher, you actually experience Pure Lands. So through our own faith and devotion, which was the last verse, then gradually the human being teacher will become a bodhisattva teacher, will become the Buddha in our lives. And through the Mahamudra path and the way the teacher teaches us, we will come to discover Dharmakaya, which is the source of all the Buddhas, as our own true being. So I thought it good to mention that, because it's not a sort of teaching. Of course, there are books on it, but it's not something you come across a lot. So now, with that verse about revulsion, there we are mainly looking in the Mahamudra journey that many of us take at the four common foundations and at the prostrations and refuge, and at Vajradhara, because those clear up our past. We're talking about revulsion, which becomes renunciation, and the word is definitive emergence. You are actually getting out, actually getting out. So in order to get out, we need to lay down the burden of our past, and we need to take refuge in where we're going, and to trust the process, and to turn our hearts in love to care for all beings, and so on. So the refuge and bodhicitta and the Vajradhara are very much to do with the revulsion verse. And then the mandala offering is the development of joy and strength and positivity, where every moment of our life becomes a sacred offering to what is beyond all time and space, to what is most meaningful. And in particular, the inner aspect of mandala offering, the chut practice, is the way we start to sever our ego from its root again and again and again. So mandala offering is a first kind of bridge. And if that works well, it takes us to Guru Yoga, which is the content of our second teaching verse in the Vajradhara prayer. And because we have done the previous foundation practices, then we are in the right place and visualizing ourselves in the right way to really enter perfectly into a union with our Guru's mind, where they start to mix and become much less different. The Guru's much less out there. And there's a dialogue, there's an interaction of energies much stronger and much deeper than there was before already in the refuge practice when we receive the blessing at the end, in the Vajradhara practice as the Guru purifies our past karma. Already there's a powerful dialogue. And in the mandala offering, where the whole way we are offering each moment sacredly is to the Gurus and the lineage, and so on. Something much, much deeper, an intimacy, because in the end, the Guru in our life is no more than the truth of ourselves. So devotion is the special method of the Kaju, because it's as simple as this. What is the Guru? The Guru is the presence of timeless truth, the isness that always was. If we can open our heart to that, there's nothing more. It floods in. We can bypass lifetimes of study, lifetimes of work with mind, consciousness, sorting it out through the power of devotion. It's the special Essence Mahamudra teachings that are referred to here. So now we need to move on to the next two verses. And so the next verse is, to be undistracted is taught as the very body of meditation. So now we've come to the body. We've had the legs that get us moving. We've had the head, which is the eyes and the ears seeing where to go very, very clearly, helping us navigate those legs. Now we've got the bulk, the body. And it says to be undistracted. Grant your blessing to the meditator who remains centered within the ever-fresh quintessence of whatever arises, without interference, and letting it be, just as it is. That it be realized there is no thing to meditate on. So, non-distraction is the body of meditation. Now remember, this whole prayer is about Mahamudra. So here we're not talking about meditation throughout Buddhism. We're not talking about Shravaka meditation, Hinayana meditation, and we're not talking about Mahayana meditation in general. we're talking about Mahamudra. We're not being distracted, but not being distracted from what? So let's explore what's happening here. The last verse was about the Guru, and the final line said, the one who opens the door of direct practice advice. Minga in Tibetan, and I explained that last time. But it means that through the Guru's instructions, we will practice the 4 common foundations and the special foundations, and we'll learn about the 4 conditions that make Mahamudra work, and we'll try and make sure that each one is in place. I forgot to earlier on, so I need to finish. We had the causal condition, our revulsion. We had the empowering condition, the Guru, so I explained the Gurus. We have the object condition, it's called. So this means focus condition. And this is view. It's what Milarepa talks about again and again, the view. And our view coming from the Minga, the direct advice of the Lama, is not a philosophical standpoint, which normally in Dharma it is. You are a Theravada, you are a Yogacharan, you are a Madhyamaka, or you are Shentong or Rantong when we get into the Tibetan traditions and so on. They are all related to consciousness, mind activity. Oh, you believe this, you think that. The way you rearrange your thoughts like some kind of Rubik's Cube. Oh, you see everything in the consequentialist, interdependence is voidness way. Or you shift your Rubik's Cube and, oh no, not quite, because you can see it this way. That's all thoughts and the play of consciousness trying to work out what can never be worked out. It has its use. It's a remedy to really confuse samsaric thinking. But here we're looking at the view of Mahamudra, which is you don't believe in any structures or ideas like that. Through the Guru's instructions, you are learning to be with mind itself in the reality of each moment. And your view of everything is not a conceptual view, a philosophical view. It's the view from being in the center, because your Guru's instructions have taught you how to be in that center and not lose that center through thinking, through feeling, through samsaric involvement of any sort. There is that pure center beyond thought. So when it says to be undistracted, it means not to lose that center, not to be distracted into situations. They're called samskaras, our mind's creations, all the history of creations we have, beginning as lifetimes. And in each moment, the mind's tendency to want to go from being unlimited and totally pure to being a somebody somewhere doing something, thinking about something, involved with something. So this is the body of Mahamudra meditation. And so it says, grant your blessing to the meditator who remains centered in what is limitless and pure, as shown by the Guru, that they remain within the ever fresh, beautiful word in Tibetan, soma. Soma is each moment is totally brand new. It never happened before. It will never happen again. And within this present moment is the truth of everything. And that truth we can't have as an abstract truth where we can just dwell in it. You know, I'll spend 5 seconds there now. It's only the truth of that moment that comes and goes that is the truth. Now, if we go into that in more detail, we've got a few years of Madhyamaka philosophy about what is true and what isn't true. It's only the truth of each living moment. If you sneeze, it's the truth of a sneeze. It's not truth as something else, as though truth could exist all by itself. That's ridiculous when you think about it, although a lot of people spend their whole lives rehearsing the truths. I think we've all done it, and we all do it. In the view, there can't be truth all by itself. It's the truth of something. It can't be absolute truth or absolute without some relative to have an absolute. And Taisutapa is beautiful here. He says, of course, there's only an absolute because there's a relative to have an absolute. But then as far as the absolute goes, there's the absolute and a sort of a relative form of the absolute, like I'm talking about now. And then when we get to the relative, we can get to the absolute of that. But because we're not Buddhas yet, it's only a relative absolute of the relative. And there's a more absolute of that absolute. And it's really true. It's really true. So the view, as we grow in Mahamudra, comes from not getting pickled. Not getting pickled. In any idea of this is it or this isn't it, we have to learn to live each moment fresh and to be, but what does it say? Within the ever fresh quintessence. We'll come back to that. Of whatever arises, which is why, Tilopa could hit Naropa with a slipper. Or in this marvelous story, and I always forget the name of the two people, but the one that many of you will have read about the awakening to the nature of mind through a dog bark. The dog is barking somewhere in the distance. It was a lama he was a tulku. I mean, he was somebody who had a lot going for him, but he knew in himself he wasn't clear about the true nature of mind. So he asked this famous lama, Nepatra Rinpoche, and thank you, Nyoshu Namtok. Thank you, Sri. But this Patra Rinpoche story, and Patra Rinpoche's own introduction to the nature of mind was getting beaten up by his guru Dorchensi. But anyway, that's Patra's story. So this story, so the person goes to Patra Rinpoche to ask. He must be a bit embarrassed. Everyone's looking to him as a guru already, but he knows he's not really got it. So he needs to sort that out quite quickly. And he goes to Patra Rinpoche. And so Patra Rinpoche gives him a rendezvous at night time out in the hills. It's probably summer, I imagine. And he said, let's just lie here a bit looking at the stars. So he's kind of waiting for this big cosmic moment of introduction to the nature of mind. And somewhere in the village that a dog barks. And Patra Rinpoche said, that's it. But of course, the way he said it and through his blessing presence, the dog bark, the present moment, and the quintessence of that moment. Now, I can't explain this. These things don't go into words very well. But whatever happens, happens in our mind, in the more general sense, the sound in this case. What happens in the mind, that mind has its innate Buddha nature, changeless nature, always there, always been there, always will be, which is Buddha. So he recognized the simultaneity of the relative moment, a dog barking, and the changeless nature of the mind, which is experiencing that. Woof. There's another, the stories are amazing. There's another one, and I forget the names as well, but this was, it's a bit of a long, all these stories, they get into bigger stories when you get the background. But this was another tulku who was really bright, and he was a Kaju tulku. And so Kajus are big on meditation. They do have all the debate and the philosophical training, but it's not number one on the list. Whereas some of the other traditions like Gelugpa, they really, philosophy is very, very important. So this Kaju tulku was the best. he became the best quite young in debate. And he wanted to go to central Tibet, where the main Gelugpa monasteries were, Sera and Drepung and so on, and go and debate with the monks there and win. So he could show, that we can do it too, and we can be super debaters, and we're not just sitting meditating, we've got the intelligence too. So I went to see his guru for permission to go. And the guru, who's very wise, said, oh yeah, okay, if you must. And he said, but maybe just wait till next week, because I'm giving an empowerment. Maybe it will be a good blessing you get the empowerment before you go. So the next week came. Now, it so happened that the night before the empowerment, the monastery cook had cooked beans. Now, you may know about beans and the effect that they have on the stomach and the gas. So this tulku came to the empowerment in the morning, very bloated because he'd eaten a good quantity of beans. And in the Tibetan tradition, you can burp as much as you want. It's not considered at all impolite. But farting or making a noise when you fart is considered very, very impolite. So this being a tulku, he was in the front row of the empowerment and trying his best to hold the gas so that he wouldn't make an embarrassing noise. And sometimes in empowerments, the empowering Rinpoche comes along with a bumpa, the vase, and places it on the head and gives you the water to drink in your hand. Sometimes you have to go up to the guru, sometimes the guru comes down, or sometimes they at least come down to the tulkus and the main monastery people. So he came down, and when he got to this young tulku, instead of just pouring the water, he kicked him in the stomach. And because of the kick in the stomach, he made a very, very loud noise as all this gas he'd been holding was released. And he was so embarrassed, but the shock and the embarrassment and the whole flush of his body and the guru being there in that moment made him realize the simultaneity of a fart and Buddha nature. And the story goes on, and he decided he wouldn't go to Central Tibetan debate after all. So anyway, they're nice stories. So remaining centered, fresh each moment, and whatever's happening, realizing that that's happening in your mind, and the pure nature of this mind, as shown by your guru, is Dhammakaya, is Mahamudra. So because it is the pure nature of whatever happens, no matter how wonderful, how foul, whatever happens, that pure nature is the pure nature of your mind in that moment. Then we don't interfere to try and make it something else, as though we'd find some ultimate state, some Mahamudra, some Buddha mind, anywhere else than in the reality of that moment. So no interfering. On the contrary, learning how to let be just as it is. Now, when it says just as it is, it means the mind nature, the truth of your mind in that moment. Of course, in the relative world, we do need to interfere. We do need to interfere, so there's no harm, so there's benefit. But what we're not interfering with is our ability to recognize the truth of each moment, as shown by the guru. Now, when that happens, something very important comes as a consequence, which is the last line. We learn there is no thing to meditate on. There is no pure nature of mind. So, okay, folks, let's just all sit down and meditate in the pure nature of mind. And you put a little notice around your lunch, back in 5 minutes, out to pure nature of mind. And you go into some cosmic space, which is Buddha. There is no other pure nature of mind. something that can be where you go, something to meditate on, like we can meditate on the breath, or on a stone, or on a visualization. There is no thing. It's only within the new freshness of each moment of our mind that we can refine it. It's a very important point. So we're saying then, as far as meditation goes, the body of our Mahamudra practice must first be taken by the Guru to the recognition where we don't just guess it, we don't just think we know it, we don't think I've experienced it. We, with the Guru, have an absolutely certified experience, so we know from then onwards definitely what nature of mind is. And the Guru's there to tell us. From that moment onwards, then we need to return to that ability to be in the fresh nature, the ultimate of the relative, and so on. The next verse is about the result. Now we've had everything about Mahamudra practice, the path, the revulsion, the devotion, the staying with the center, the pure nature of mind. Then what is the result? And it says, the essence of mental activity is taught to be Dharmakaya. Nothing whatsoever. It's what I just mentioned. It's not a thing that is a something you can go to, be in, meditate on. Yet manifest as anything whatsoever. As a dog bark, as a fart, or whatever it is. Nothing whatsoever, yet each moment manifest as anything whatsoever. From heaven to hell, from the purest of pure lands to the worst confusion. Dharmakaya manifests as all those things. And yet it is in itself nothing, but it is the truth of all of those. You could put it simply in words, but then that might take us to getting it wrong. You could say whatever happens, whether you're a glorious bodhisattva in 100 pure lands at the same time, or whether you're suffering in Vajra hell, what is doing all that? It's your mind. So it's just the truth of this mind. You could say that, but it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that simple. Because we're immediately going to think, when we hear the word mind, of what mind means to us. We've a lot to discover about mind. So grant your blessing that the meditator at ease in its unstopped play. Now this word here translated as unstopped is interesting. We could just say uninterrupted play, which makes us think of life just happens moment after moment. It's a flow, so it's being in the living moment of the flow, but being also in that living moment with the ultimate Dharmakaya nature of mind. But here it's more of an active word, unstopped. Unstopped. We are not blocking the flow. So when we come to famous Mahamudra instructions like Tilopa's, then we see we are not getting stuck in the past. Now there, the past doesn't mean the past, all of that, what we think of as the past. It means the previous moment, the previous instant. Because, we're beginners. We are humans. And as we sit and meditate, sometimes something happens and you think, oh, hang on a moment. And you want to kind of stop the movie and go back and explore that one further or keep it going. I almost got it. Just a second. What was that? I must go back there. So we must learn not to cling, put our hooks, even second by second, into the living moment. And we learn the same thing for what we call the future, which is just some weird idea in our imagination. We don't think about, oh, where might this go? You know, if I sit here, if I don't move a muscle, if I don't breathe, then maybe we're going to go up a rung and I might get a first level bodhisattva glimpse or whatever. Interfering. Or then we don't try. So past, the future, the present, we don't try and sort of be here now where we're making some kind of big deal of the present moment. The word in Mahamudra is the ordinary mind. It's not I remember one Zen master, I better not say his name, but he made such a big deal of being here now. I remember seeing him in Paris. He had this commanding voice and he'd sit there in his black robes looking like a mountain. As though we were sort of gradually wiggling ourselves into some super situation. He would say, be here now. Where, when, you know, it was, so we don't make oh, I'm sorry. I have to tell you the story. It was sad and wonderful because I was the courier between the 16th Karmapa and this Zen master. And I had to go to his Dharma center and give him an invitation to attend the crown ceremony, Vajra crown ceremony, and be a special guest because this guy was a big shot. So, well, to cut that long enough, this is a lovely story, but anyway, I mean, when I turned up at his center, it was the 6th of January. And the 6th of January in France, you have a special cake, and the person who gets called the fève that's in the cake when you cut it, they put on a golden crown. So I went into this Zen center to see the Zen teacher sitting at the lunch table with a golden crown, because obviously his disciple has fixed it so that he'd get the crown. Anyway, I gave him the invitation. So when he came to the Vajra crown ceremony, then he and his monks were sitting on the stage in Paris, and they're special guests. And he had a lot of followers in Paris. So he's sitting there looking like being here now. And then they play all these Tibetan instruments with and all of this. It's quite dramatic. And then the Karmapa picks up his little drum. And then after it goes faster, and then a big puff. And I could see the teacher, the Zen teacher, he was getting more and more tense because I was right next to the stage. And then when the Karmapa went pop, he jumped like this. And he was so embarrassed because he wasn't sitting there cool as a cucumber and just kind of being Zen master. But something really happened. Karmapa gave him a great gift there. It was like the dog bark. It was like the kicking the tulku's stomach, because the guy was a wonderful meditator and he helped people a lot, but he still was a bit too full of himself as being here and now. And so the here and now got a bit more than he could stomach. Anyway, so the unstopped play, not stopped by getting caught in the past moment, not stopped by the future moment, not stopped by being in the present, not stopped by any kind of engineering where you're trying to make your mind anything other than what it is in that moment, because you've got some idea of how it ought to be. Your idea of Dharmakaya or Buddha is interfering with the present moment, so you try and make it what you think it ought to be, rather than recognizing it for what it is. So when that happens, now the next line I can't explain because there is no explanation for it. It just happens as the result of the great results. This inseparability of samsara and nirvana is realized. Now, this is a huge statement. So much of the Buddha's teaching, and especially at the beginning, is you've got to get out of samsara and you're going to nirvana. They're oceans apart. They're the opposite of each other. Suffering, no more suffering. Reincarnation, free forever. So different in that sense. So what on earth does it mean that they are inseparable? They are the same. Maybe we can use words to say they are of the same nature. And indeed, when Gampopa introduces his major work, the Hotajin, then in there, he actually starts with an analysis of this. What is samsara? What is nirvana? But they are both the mind. So realizing here does not mean intellectual understanding, does not mean having some kind of notion. It means directly aware, afresh, each moment, of what the potential samsara and nirvana is of that moment and what is beyond them. So I was going to do something and I forgot this morning. I was going to bring a piece of rope. So I'm looking for some. Anyone got a piece of rope? Thank you. What can I use? Headphone cable. Oops, my desk's a mess. So a piece of rope, right? You could tie it into a knot. Okay, knot. You could tie it into a knot around your neck. That might be even more dramatic. So, like that. Oops. Untying a knot. Now, in the actions, what happened? There was this. There was a motion of the hands. And in untying, there was this. There was a motion of the hands. What's the difference? Something? The motion of the hands. The tying of our knot of samsara is an activity of, now here the Tibetan is called Namtok, and nearly everywhere you'll find this translated as thoughts. It often says the essence of thought. Now it's not just thoughts, it's everything that's in your consciousness. Thoughts, emotions, habits, the presence of past karma, not just the presence of so many things that we call vijnana, consciousness. We're talking about the essence of those. So the way that thoughts and feelings work through interaction and interdependence is they can get us into trouble. So they interact with each other and they get us into suffering and rebirth. Or we can think differently and relate to things emotionally differently and change our ingrained habits, even those of lifetimes and centuries, so that we get out of trouble. We can either get into trouble or we can get out of trouble. All of it is work with consciousness. The whole spiritual path and the experiences and the realizations that come with it until we get to the end is work with vijnana, consciousness, or namtok, mental activity. That's why the nature is the same. these mental activities get you into trouble. Remedial mental activities get you out of trouble. Mind work, effort, interference. So when we get to the results, not the end result, but already the good results of Mahamudra, which we study through the 4 yogas, which is a big topic, then what we, oops, just lost a connection, just a moment. So, we're working with our mind to get the result, which is realization. And when it actually happens without any words, then this same nature, the mind does this or it does that. It does and it undoes, but it's all mental busyness. The path to release needs us to be busy. It needs right conduct, right diligence. All of the right things need to be done. But it's all away from this center of this made Ken's story. Ken's story is not going to go away. This needs to be done to Ken so that he doesn't hurt anymore and hurts less and less. It's all of this operating on a relative level. It's the same nature. Same nature. It's like speech. Words that hurt, words that bless. It's the tongue moving, its sounds, its vibrations and frequencies. But there's a difference in some ways. In some ways. So anyway, that profound topic, which I can't explain, if I could explain, I don't think anybody would be in samsara if it was something that people could just understand by hearing words or picking up a book. This is very, very deep. But anyway, that's the end of our prayers. Now, at one point, going back and looking over all of that, in the devotion verse, it says the Guru opens the door to direct practice advice. In the past, it was guru-disciple, tailor-made, custom-made, a dialogue between two people. These days, it often can't be like that. We don't have endless gurus to go around. You can't each have one up in your attic to go and see every day if you want. It's very, very, very hard to find and to meet a perfect guru. But in general, we can still get through our Dharma teachers, through our local lamas and Dharma centers. We can still get all we need to go a long, long way. But because we are not able to each be the Karmapa's own private disciple or Taisitupa's own disciple, we don't each have a Mapa or a Milarepa living next door, then we need to practice and we need to know this minga, the instructions that you need to know and I need to know. We need to know what is most vital in there. And I did want to mention that what the Guru will teach you is refuge until you've really taken refuge, until you trust. Whether you've done 100,000 prostrations and 100,000 refuge takings or not, do you trust? Have you entrusted everything you are to the lineage, to the Buddhas, to the Bodhisattvas? Are you really thinking many, many lifetimes? Or are you plumbed into just this lifetime? So a good guru and a good way we can follow the teachings is to make sure we have that in place first, that we really trust. And then bodhicitta, that we are taking great pains every day to become more loving and caring for our fellow beings. Not just saying the words, not just knowing it's a good thing, doing whatever it takes. And we have special meditations the Guru and the teachings show us how to first become more loving, and then how to become more compassionate, and then how to give rise to bodhicitta. And then we do the foundation practices in Guru Yoga. And then we do shamatha. But if we do shamatha and then vipassana, the insight based on shamatha, so that shamatha, you make your mind still and reliable, stable. And then within that stability, which becomes your laboratory for exploring mind's nature, then you, with the Guru's advice, do the vipassana exercises. But if you do those cold-heartedly, without bodhicitta, then you're never going to become Buddha. You're never going to really practice Mahamudra. You become like practices of other faiths. Many people do shamatha. Many people achieve special results through shamatha or meditation practice. So the minnak, if you had Mapa guiding you or Karmapa guiding you and keeping an eye on you, as Akon Rinpoche did with many of us, then he said, I'm not teaching you anymore. He said, I know you're fed up. I come back, I tell you always the same things. But as far as I can see, most of you aren't doing them. So until you do them, because often we invited him to give a talk. We have many lamas who came to Samiling. His idea was not for him to teach, but to bring the greatest lamas, which he did. So different from nearly every other Dharma center where whoever's the main lama really dominates all the teachings that happen there. Akon Rinpoche stood back and he brought the Karmapa and Taisitupa and Dilgo Chensi Rinpoche and every wonderful lama he could find to Samiling. So we said, no, but we want your teachings, Rinpoche. You know, you're our teacher. They come and go. You're here. We're with you. And he was reluctant, but when he did, he kept telling us always the same thing: a refuge, a loving kindness, be humble. And he said, I'm telling you, I've told you again and again, but I look at you, you're not humble. You don't have that much loving care. You're full of ego. So I'm not going to give you any deeper teachings until I think you're practicing the ones I've already given you. Now that's a real guru, looking after us. That's not a punishment. That's doing us the greatest favor in the world. And I see a lot today, online and in Dharma practice, of teachers giving outrageously advanced practices to people who aren't ready. I don't even know if we can call them teachers, but that's what they're billed as, and people go to them. So anyway, that verse is very important, the direct practice advice. And my own teachers, the 16th Karmapa, the first Kalu Rinpoche, and so on, insisted so much on that necessary foundation of revulsion, renunciation, and then on top of that, the loving heart for everybody. So when you are glowing with that love and the humility and the selfishness, then shamatha fulfills its purpose. Otherwise, it's just a technicality. So now I want to finish, because I want to give you a little bit of time to give you the transmission of the prayer. And thanks again to Katie for singing it for us. You got your own sing along with version at home, which is very, very, very nice. So I've given you the English as we've gone through it verse by verse. So the Tibetan transmission is this. Doji Changchen Telo Naroda Mapamela Choji Kampopa Tusum Sheja Kunchin Kamapa Cheshi Chunje Jupa Zinamda Rita Sosum Padim Drupa So Sablong Chacha Chelan Yanipe Nyame Droganda Puka Juda Sowand Soka Judama Nakjupa Zinmo Namtara Jinjelo Shenlo Gomji Kambara Sumpashin Zeno Kuna Jakshen Me Padang Sede Bata Chopi Gomchen La Neko Shempa Me Para Jinjilo Mogu Gomji Gora Sumpashin Nanga Tego Jepi Lama La Junduso and Depi Lama Gomchen La Chomin Mogu Jewara Jinjilo Yingme Gomji Mashe Sumpashin Dansha Topingo Samade Macho de Karajopi Gomchen La Gomcha Lo Dantra Mare Jinjilo Namtok o Chukra Sumpashin Chiang Mayan Chiang Chawana Mangaro Pachawi Gomchen La Kode Yerme Topara Jinjilo. That's the actual prayer from Bengar Jampal Zangpo. Mostly when we chant it, we add another verse, which is not from him, which is in all my lives may I not be separate from the Guru and the teachings. Jewa Kundu Yanda Lama Dan Tromechoji Paralong Chochin Sadan Lamji Yanten Rabzone Doji Changi Compagno Tursho. May I traverse the paths and the levels and become Buddha Vajradhara myself. So there we go. We've briefly gone through this Dorji Chang prayer. Now, when we recite it, we usually imagine our Guru in front of us in the form of Buddha Vajradhara. So with the feel of our own Guru, but as though the Guru is showing a sublime form as Buddha Vajradhara with the hands crossed at the heart and blue and so on. And the Guru embodying all the lineage. So if you do the refuge practice, the prostrations, you'll know the whole refuge tree. You can visualize that. If you don't, then simply your Guru embodying the whole lineage in front of you as Buddha Vajradhara. Thank you. So I'm going to unpin myself.
Go je paie comme Jen vai nie cura Jen pa me para Jen gilo ma cơ com chi go war song ba Jen men at te go je pe la ma la chen de sol wa Dieu pe comme chen la je men ma go je wara chen ji lo ye me com chi ne shira song ba shin gong sha dog bay ngo so ma de ma chu de kara jog bay gong chin la gong cha no time tra water chin chi lo nam to ga wo chokura sung pa shin chi yan ma yen chi yan cha wa la manga ro pa cha we gom chen la ko de ye me dog para chen ji lo ko de ye